Here's something that sets Norse mythology apart from every other creation story you've ever heard. The gods knew the ending before the beginning even started. Odin, the All-Father, king of Asgard, hung himself from the world tree for 9 agonizing days, wounded by his own spear, denied food and water, teetering between life and death, all to learn the runes, those symbols of cosmic knowledge. And what did those runes tell him? That everything he would build would burn, that the wolf he would chain would one day devour him, that the son he loved most would die from a twig of mistletoe, that his brother Loki, blood-bound to him in sacred oath, would lead the armies of chaos against everything they'd created together. The all-seeing God saw it all, and still, he chose to build Asgard anyway. This isn't a story about gods who win. This is a story about gods who know they're going to lose, who know their children will die, who know their halls will burn to ash, who know the very fabric of reality will tear apart, and who wake up every morning and fight anyway. That's not just mythology. That's a philosophy powerful enough to send Vikings across unknown seas, to face death in battle with joy rather than fear, to turn doom itself into a reason to live fiercely rather than surrender to despair. But to understand why that philosophy matters, we need to go back to the very beginning. Back before there were gods or giants, before there was earth or sky, before the first star kindled in the darkness. Back to a scream echoing through emptiness. Back to the moment when violence created everything. Your world, the soil beneath your feet, the mountains on the horizon, the clouds drifting overhead, the oceans that cover most of the planet. It all came from a murder. From the calculated slaughter of a being whose name means the Screamer. A being who never asked to exist, who emerged from the collision of fire and ice in a void that should have stayed empty, who lived only long enough to watch his own descendants drown in the flood of his blood, when 3 brothers decided that creation required destruction. Tonight, I'm going to tell you things about Norse mythology that will reframe everything you thought you knew. You'll discover why Odin, supposedly the wisest of all beings, made decisions that guaranteed his own destruction. You'll learn the real reason the gods had to kill Ymir, and why that murder echoes through every myth that follows. You'll find out what Loki was before he became the villain, and the precise moment when his loyalty shattered. You'll understand why binding Fenrir was the worst mistake the gods ever made, why it ensured rather than prevented their doom. And you'll see how a single sprig of mistletoe, overlooked, insignificant, became the crack that brought down all of Asgard. This journey spans the entirety of the Norse cosmos, but it's also intensely personal. These aren't distant deities playing out predetermined roles. These are beings who love and hate, who make terrible choices for understandable reasons, who sacrifice themselves for each other and betray each other with equal passion. They're not role models, they're mirrors. And what they reflect back is both beautiful and terrible. The truth that we build knowing everything will fall, that we love knowing loss is inevitable, that we fight knowing we can't win. And somehow, impossibly, that makes the building and the loving and the fighting matter more, not less. We'll draw from the primary sources, the Poetic Edda, ancient poems that predate the Viking Age, and the Prose Edda, written around 1220 by Snorri Sturluson, a Christian scholar recording pagan myths. And here's where it gets fascinating. Nearly everything we know about Norse beliefs was written down after Christianity had already converted Scandinavia. The myths survived, but they survived through a Christian filter. And that raises unsettling questions. How much did Snorri change? When he describes the world's rebirth after Ragnarok, is he recording genuine Norse belief in cyclic renewal or imposing a Christian redemption narrative onto a mythology that originally ended in absolute annihilation. Scholars have debated this for decades, and the truth might be darker than you'd expect. Some evidence suggests the original Norse belief was this: when Ragnarok came, that was it. No rebirth, no hope. Just entropy winning, chaos triumphant, everything you've ever loved reduced to ash and forgotten forever. And the Norse looked at that absolute doom and decided the only rational response was to live with such fierce joy and courage that how they lived mattered more than how it ended. That philosophy, sometimes called Northern heroism, shaped an entire civilization. It sent Vikings across unknown oceans. It made warriors sing in battle. It transformed doom from a reason to despair into a reason to be magnificent. So let your breathing slow. Settle into this space. The hall is vast, lit by flickering firelight, and the skalds are gathering to tell the oldest stories they know. Stories of when the gods were young, when giants walked the frozen wastes, when the world tree Yggdrasil first took root, and when fate itself was still being woven by three ancient sisters who answered to no one, not even the All-Father. These are not comfortable stories. These are not stories where the heroes always win or where virtue is always rewarded. These are stories about a world that was born in violence, sustained by endless conflict and destined to end in flames. But they are also stories about dignity in the face of doom, about the value of wisdom, the importance of loyalty, and the terrible cost of broken oaths. Welcome to the Norse cosmos. Welcome to a world of 9 realms connected by an immense ash tree, where gods drink mead in golden halls while knowing that those halls will burn, where warriors feast in Valhalla preparing for a battle they cannot win, where even the fates themselves are bound by laws they did not create. Welcome to Ginnungagap. Welcome to Yggdrasil. Welcome to Asgard and Midgard and the frozen wastes of Jotunheim. Welcome to Ragnarok. The story begins in nothing. And from nothing, impossibly, came everything. I, Ginnungagap, the yawning void and the birth of existence. In the beginning, there was no earth, no sky, no crashing waves or wheeling stars, no night or day, no seasons, no time itself as we understand it. There was only Ginnungagap, a name that scholars translate variously as the yawning void, the gap of gaps, the magical emptiness, depending on which aspect of this primordial nothingness they wish to emphasize. The word itself relates to Old Norse Ginna, meaning to deceive or to enchant, suggesting that this was not merely physical emptiness, but a space of magical potential, pregnant with unrealized possibilities. Imagine trying to describe perfect nothingness while simultaneously acknowledging that this nothingness contains the seeds of everything. That's the paradox at the heart of Norse creation, that the void was somehow full, that nothing contained everything, that absence was presence. Snorri Sturluson, writing in his prose Edda around 1220, describes Ginnungagap as existing between 2 primordial realms that somehow preceded creation itself. To the north lay Niflheim, the world of mist and ice, a realm of such profound cold that even the concept of temperature seems inadequate to describe it. This was not the cold of a winter night or a mountain peak. This was the cold of entropy, of heat death, of the universe winding down to absolute zero. From Niflheim flowed 11 rivers known collectively as the Elivagar. Their name means ice waves or storm waves. According to the sources, these rivers carried IITR, a word often translated as poison or venom, suggesting they were toxic, corrosive, dangerous even before life existed to be endangered by them. To the south lay Muspelheim, the realm of fire, heat, and primal flame. If Niflheim represented entropy and stillness, Muspelheim represented energy and violent motion. Guarded by the fire giant Surtur, whose name means black or swart, Muspelheim existed as pure destructive potential. Surtur wielded a flaming sword and was destined from before the beginning to survive until after the end, fated to be the one who would ultimately set fire to the world at Ragnarok. The fact that he existed even before creation suggests he was something more fundamental than a mere giant. He was the principle of combustion itself, of reduction to ash, of the flames that both destroy and purify. Between these two extremes, between absolute cold and absolute heat, Ginnungagap yawned empty. But as the icy rivers from Niflheim crept southward, and the radiant heat from Muspelheim pulsed northward, they met in that void. When freezing poison encountered scorching flame in Ginnungagap, something impossible happened. Thawing. The ice began to melt, but not into simple water. The drops that formed were vitalized, animated by the collision of opposites. In Norse thought, creation required polarity, required the meeting of extremes. Life could not emerge from homogeneity, but only from the violent interaction of opposing forces. The dripping, melting ice in the heart of Ginnungagap quickened into something more than moisture. It quickened into life. And that life took form as Ymir, the first giant, the primordial hermaphrodite, whose very name tells us something crucial about the Norse understanding of creation. Scholars derive Ymir from Old Norse imja, meaning to scream or to howl. So the first being was essentially the screamer. Some sources also call him Orgelmir, which may mean sand screamer or gravel screamer. This association with screaming is profoundly important. The scream is the wordless voice, the pre-linguistic expression of raw existence. It is sound before meaning, utterance before language. In this reading, Ymir represents pure potential, the undifferentiated chaos that precedes and enables all differentiated form. He is the scream from which all words will eventually be carved. But Ymir was not alone for long in Ginnungagap. The same melting ice that formed him also formed another being. Audumbla, the primordial cow, whose name may mean rich hornless or wealth producer. Within the symbolic framework of Norse mythology, Audumbla makes perfect sense. Cows were life itself to the ancient Scandinavians. They provided milk, meat, leather, and bone. A cow was survival incarnate. That the first nurturing being should take bovine form reflects the centrality of cattle to Norse agricultural life. 4 rivers of milk flowed from Audumla's udders, and Ymir sustained himself on this primal nourishment. Thus we have our first great binary. Ymir, the screaming chaos giant, sustained by Audumbla, the life-giving cow, chaos fed by sustenance, entropy temporarily held at bay by nourishment. But Audumbla required nourishment as well. She survived by licking the salty ice blocks that had formed in Ginnungagap. And as she licked, she gradually revealed something hidden within the ice. On the first day of licking, hair began to appear. On the second day, a full head emerged from the melting ice. On the third day, a complete man stood free. Buri, whose name means producer or father. We are given almost no information about Buri beyond his name and the fact that he was tall, strong, and handsome. But his emergence is crucial because he represents a different lineage entirely from Ymir. Ymir reproduced asexually. While he slept, giants sprouted from his armpits and from between his legs, a grotesque form of generation that emphasizes his hermaphroditic, undifferentiated nature. But Buri, licked free from ice by a cosmic cow, would father a line that would eventually oppose and destroy Ymir. Buri begat a son named Bor, about whom we know little except that he married Bestla, a giantess, daughter of a being named Böltorn. This marriage between Bor and Bestla would produce 3 sons: Odin, Vili, and Ve. These 3 brothers would become the first of the Aesir, the principal tribe of Norse gods. But note the genealogy here. Even the gods have giant blood. Odin's mother was a giantess. This complicates any simple reading of gods as good and giants as evil. The Norse cosmos is more nuanced than that. Giants represent chaos, entropy, the forces of unstructured nature. Gods represent order, cosmos, the forces of structure and meaning. But they are not separate species. They intermarry. They make alliances. They break those alliances. While Ymir slept, his body began generating other beings. From the sweat of his armpits came a male and a female, the first of the Jotnar, or giants. Meanwhile, his legs became intimate with each other, and from this union came a 6-headed son. This mode of reproduction, asexual, autogenic, producing offspring from sweat and from limbs coupling with themselves, reinforces Ymir's status as primordial chaos. Sexual differentiation had not yet fully manifested. Male and female existed in potential within Ymir's hermaphroditic body, but had not yet separated into distinct categories. Odin, Vili, and Ve grew to maturity in this strange proto-world of ice and fire, of a screaming primordial giant and his descendants, of a cosmic cow licking salt blocks. And at some point, the 3 brothers decided that Ymir had to die. The texts don't say why. Snorri simply states that the sons of Bor killed Ymir. Perhaps Ymir and his giant descendants represented a threat to the brothers. Perhaps the cosmos could not be ordered while the embodiment of chaos still lived. Perhaps creation requires destruction, and the new gods understood that they could not build until they had torn down what existed before them. Whatever their reasoning, Odin, Vili, and Ve attacked Ymir and killed him. And when they struck the fatal blow, so much blood poured from his wounds that it drowned nearly all of his giant descendants in a catastrophic flood. Only one couple survived, Bergelmir and his unnamed wife. They escaped in a ludra, a word whose meaning scholars debate, variously translated as boat, chest, or hollowed-out tree trunk. The specifics matter less than the fact that this couple survived to repopulate the race of giants, ensuring that chaos would never be entirely eradicated, that the forces of entropy would remain active in the cosmos, that the gods would always have adversaries. The 3 brothers, standing in the aftermath of this cosmic murder, looked at the massive corpse before them and saw not a tragedy, but an opportunity. They saw raw material. They saw the substance from which they could construct everything. From Ymir's corpse, the creation of Midgard and the cosmos. The creation of the world from the body of a slain primordial being is a motif that appears in multiple Indo-European mythologies, suggesting it may go back to a shared Proto-Indo-European creation story. The Indian Rigveda describes the creation from the cosmic giant Purusha. The ancient Persian Bundahishn describes Gaiamat. Even in ancient Mesopotamian myths, we find Tiamat's body being used to create heaven and earth. But the Norse version provides exceptionally gruesome and specific details about exactly which parts of Ymir became which aspects of the created world. Odin, Vili, and Ve dragged Ymir's corpse to the center of Ginnungagap. That yawning void, which had been the womb of creation, now became its construction site. And they began their work. From Ymir's flesh, they shaped the earth. Midgard, the middle enclosure, the world where humans would eventually live. His flesh became soil, became the substance on which grass would grow and trees would root. Think about the implications here. Every field, every forest, every handful of dirt is Ymir's meat. The land itself is dead giant. There is something deeply unsettling but also strangely beautiful about this conception. That life grows from death, that the chaos giant's corpse provides the substrate for order. From Ymir's blood, the brothers created the seas and lakes. The Prose Edda states this explicitly. This blood ocean surrounded Midgard, forming a natural boundary beyond which lay other realms. But blood is never just water in Norse mythology. Blood carries lineage, carries identity, carries power. That the oceans are Ymir's blood means they retain something of his nature, something wild and untamable. The sea in Norse culture was a realm of danger and death, as much as of bounty and trade. From his bones, they raised the mountains. Imagine that. The rocky spine of the world, the peaks that scrape the clouds, are the very bones of the first being. Some bones they left whole, creating the great mountain ranges. Others they shattered into smaller pieces to make rocks and stones and pebbles. His teeth, distinguishing between teeth that were broken and those that remained intact, became additional rocks and boulders scattered across Midgard. From Ymir's hair, the brothers fashioned the trees. His bristling giant hair became the forests that covered Midgard, the oak and ash and pine that would provide timber for halls and ships. The poem Grimnismal adds that every tree that grows draws its life from Ymir's hair, maintaining the connection between the living forests and the dead giant. But what of Ymir's skull? The brothers took his massive skull and placed it over the earth like a dome, creating the sky itself. They positioned it carefully, holding it aloft at the 4 cardinal points with supports. And what supports? Dwarfs. 4 dwarfs specifically, whose names tell us their purpose. Nordri, Sudri, Austri, and Vestri. North, south, east, and west. These dwarfs were tasked with holding up the sky for eternity, ensuring that Ymir's skull wouldn't collapse back down onto the earth. The clouds were formed from Ymir's brains. The brothers flung his brains into the air, according to Snorri, and they became the clouds that drift across the sky. There's something delightfully grotesque about this image. Clouds as grey matter, storms as thoughts, weather as the scattered consciousness of a slain giant. Now they needed light. The brothers took sparks and embers that had been blown out of Muspelheim during the creation and placed them strategically in the heavens. Some they fixed in place, creating the stars. Others they set in motion, creating the sun and moon, though sources vary on the exact details of how the celestial bodies were formed. But even with light, even with land and sea and sky, Midgard was not yet habitable. It was still too exposed, too vulnerable to the giants who lived in the outer realms. So the brothers took one more portion of Ymir's body, his eyebrows, and from these they built a wall around Midgard. This fortification would separate the ordered world from the chaos beyond, would protect the realm of humans from the hostile forces of Jotunheim, the land of the giants. The word Midgard literally means middle enclosure, and the enclosure was Ymir's eyebrows, shaped into a defensive wall. The poem Völuspá in the Poetic Edda presents these same events with poetic compression. From Ymir's flesh the earth was formed, and from his bones the mountains, heaven from the skull of that frost-cold giant, and from his blood the sea. But the creation of the physical world was only the beginning. The brothers also established the structure of time itself. Before this moment, time had no meaning. There was no day or night, no seasons, no years. The gods remedied this by establishing the movements of the sun and moon, creating the rhythm of day and night. Now, we must pause to acknowledge something that complicates the narrative. Snorri's account in the Prose Edda was written 200 to 300 years after the end of the Viking Age, long after Iceland and Scandinavia had converted to Christianity. Snorri was Christian himself, though he was deeply interested in preserving the old stories as part of Iceland's cultural heritage. This means he was writing about pagan beliefs from outside those beliefs, and scholars debate how much he may have Christianized the myths, consciously or unconsciously. When he emphasizes Odin, Vili, and Ve as a trinity of creators, some scholars wonder if he's importing Christian Trinitarian thinking. We simply don't know with certainty. This uncertainty is important to acknowledge. When we discuss Norse mythology, we're not discussing a living religious tradition whose practitioners can confirm or correct our interpretations. We're discussing beliefs that died out roughly 900 to 1,000 years ago, recorded primarily by people who no longer held those beliefs, working from oral traditions that had likely already been modified by contact with Christianity. Still, certain elements appear consistently enough across different sources to be reasonably confident about them. The 9 worlds, for instance, though sources disagree on exactly which 9 worlds and various details. The traditional list includes Asgard, the realm of the Aesir gods, built after they created Midgard. Asgard sits at the top of the cosmos, connected to Midgard by the Rainbow Bridge Bifrost. Within Asgard are many halls, including Valhalla, Odin's hall, where fallen warriors feast. Vanaheim, realm of the Vanir, a separate tribe of gods associated with fertility, prosperity, and nature. The Aesir and Vanir fought a war early in mythic time, eventually making peace and exchanging hostages. Midgard, the world of humans, created from Ymir's body, surrounded by the ocean and protected by the wall made from his eyebrows. Jotunheim, realm of the Jotnar, or giants, embodiments of chaos and entropy. Located in the mountainous regions east of Midgard, though geography in Norse myth is always somewhat symbolic. Alfheim, realm of the light elves, beautiful and luminous beings of supernatural power. Svartalfheim, or Nidavellir, realm of the dark elves or dwarfs. The dwarfs were master craftsmen who forged many of the gods' most precious items. They lived underground, and sunlight could turn them to stone. Niflheim, the primordial realm of ice and mist that existed before creation, located in the north. Muspelheim, the primordial realm of fire that existed before creation, located in the south. Guarded by Surtur, it will play a crucial role at Ragnarok. Helheim, or Hel, the realm of the dead, located beneath the roots of Yggdrasil. Not a place of punishment like the Christian hell, but simply the realm where most people go after death. These 9 worlds all exist in relation to Yggdrasil, the world tree, which we'll discuss in detail shortly. For now, understand that it's the cosmic axis, the pillar that holds existence together. The creation from Ymir's corpse gave the cosmos its physical structure. But structure is not enough. The world needed inhabitants. It needed gods to dwell in Asgard. It needed humans to live in Midgard. And it needed other beings to fill the other realms. The Norse cosmos, then, is a corpse world, built from murder and saturated with violence from its very inception. But it is also, paradoxically, a life world, because from that death came everything we know: earth, sky, sea, mountains, trees, clouds. The gods transformed screaming chaos into ordered beauty. They took the undifferentiated and gave it form. they created from destruction. 3. Yggdrasil, the world tree and the structure of reality. At the center of all 9 worlds, holding them together, connecting them, providing the fundamental axis around which reality is organized, stands Yggdrasil, the world tree, the cosmic ash tree, the greatest and most sacred of trees. Without Yggdrasil, the worlds would collapse into chaos. The tree maintains their order, though even the tree is not eternal, will not survive Ragnarök, is even now being slowly destroyed by the forces gnawing at its roots and eating its leaves. The name Yggdrasil is fascinating linguistically. Yggdrasil is one of Odin's many names, meaning the terrible one. Drasil comes from Old Norse meaning horse or steed, so Yggdrasil translates as Ygg's horse or Odin's steed. But why would a tree be called Odin's horse? The answer lies in one of the most famous episodes in Norse mythology. Odin's self-sacrifice, his hanging from the world tree for 9 days and nights to gain knowledge of the runes. The poem Havamal contains Odin's own account of this ordeal. I know that I hung on a windy tree 9 long nights, wounded with a spear, dedicated to Odin, myself to myself, on that tree of which no man knows from where its roots run. He continues describing how no bread or drink was given to him, how he peered downward in his agony, how he took up the runes screaming before falling back from the tree. This is shamanic initiation through ordeal, death and rebirth, suffering that leads to enlightenment. Odin hangs himself from Yggdrasil, wounds himself with his own spear, denies himself food and water, endures 9 nights of agony. And at the end, in his extremity, in that moment between life and death, he perceives the runes, the magical symbols that form the basis of writing, magic, and cosmic understanding in Norse thought. After Odin falls from the tree, having died and been reborn through his ordeal, he possesses the runes. These were not just an alphabet, though they were that, but runes were also magical symbols, each associated with specific powers, concepts, and forces. To know the runes was to know the fundamental structure of reality, to be able to manipulate fate, to work magic of the highest order. Yggdrasil itself was an ash, a species with deep roots, strong wood, and the ability to survive in poor soil, appropriate symbolism for something holding reality together under stress. It was described as impossibly vast, its branches extending over all the worlds, its trunk so massive that nothing could encompass it. Yet it was also described as suffering, as constantly under attack, as vulnerable despite its power. 3 roots extended from Yggdrasil into 3 different realms. By each root was a well or spring. Urdabrunn, the well of fate, lay beneath the root in Asgard. This was the dwelling place of the Norns, the 3 sisters who controlled fate itself. Their names were Urdr, that which has become, Verdandi, that which is becoming, and Skuld, that which should become. Roughly past, present, and future, though Norse conceptions of time were more complex than simple linear progression. The Norns were not gods, but something older, more fundamental. Even the gods were subject to their weaving. Each day, the Norns would draw water from Urdabrunna and mix it with mud to seal Yggdrasil's bark, preventing it from rotting, but they could not stop the decay entirely, only slow it. Mimisbrunna, Mimir's well, lay beneath another root. This well contained infinite wisdom, and to drink from it was to gain knowledge beyond mortal or divine comprehension. Mimir was the well's guardian. Odin came to this well seeking to drink, and Mimir demanded payment. An eye. Without hesitation, Odin tore out his own eye and dropped it into the well's depths. He drank, gaining wisdom, but sacrificing half his sight for it. This is why Odin is always depicted as one-eyed. The eye remains in the well, looking up from the depths, seeing things Odin's remaining eye cannot see. Hvergelmir, the roaring kettle, lay beneath the third root in Niflheim. This was the wellspring from which many rivers flowed, including the primordial Elivagar. But Hvergelmir was also the dwelling place of Nidhögr, the serpent who gnawed eternally at Yggdrasil's roots, trying to bring the tree down, trying to destroy the structure of reality itself. Nidhögr was hatred incarnate, malice without reason, entropy given teeth. He could not be killed, could not be stopped, only endured. But Nidhögr was not the only creature afflicting Yggdrasil. In the tree's highest branches perched an eagle, whose name we're not told. Between the eagle's eyes sat a hawk named Vedrfölnir. The eagle and Nidhögr hated each other, exchanged insults constantly, but could never directly confront each other. The distance was too great. So they used an intermediary, Ratatoska, a squirrel who ran up and down Yggdrasil's trunk, carrying insults between them. Ratatoska delighted in exacerbating their conflict, in making each think the other had said something even more offensive. This squirrel represents communication in its most destructive form. 4 stags also ran among Yggdrasil's branches, eating its leaves and bark. Dain, Dvalin, Dunær, and Durathror. The tree fed them, but they also damaged it with their feeding. Consider what this means. Yggdrasil, the world tree, the cosmic axis holding everything together, is under constant assault. Its roots are being gnawed by a malevolent serpent. Its bark is being eaten by stags. Its trunk serves as a highway for a malicious squirrel spreading discord. Only the Norns' daily care keeps it from collapsing entirely, and even they cannot stop the decay, only slow it. The cosmos is not stable. Order is not permanent. The structure holding reality together is dying by degrees, and everyone knows it. This is profoundly different from cosmologies where creation is followed by eternal stability. In Norse thought, creation was an act of violence, and the created world is perpetually vulnerable, perpetually under attack, perpetually dying. Maintenance requires constant effort. The god's role is not to preside over a finished creation, but to desperately shore up a failing one, to hold chaos at bay, knowing they will eventually lose. Yggdrasil also served as the pathway between worlds. The gods traveled via Yggdrasil's structure, moving along its roots and branches. Odin rode Sleipnir along these cosmic pathways. Shamans supposedly climbed the world tree to visit other worlds, to commune with spirits, to retrieve lost souls. The tree was both physical and spiritual, both concrete and abstract, both real and representative. Yet despite all its vulnerabilities, despite the constant attacks and the slow rot, Yggdrasil endured. It would endure through all the ages of myth, through the war between Aesir and Vanir, through all the gods' adventures and tragedies. It would still be standing when Heimdall blew his horn to signal Ragnarok's beginning. Only during that final battle would Yggdrasil shake and tremble. The world tree stands. The gods rule from Asgard. Giants plot in Jotunheim. Humans toil in Midgard. The Norns weave fate. And in his hall, sitting on his throne, ravens on his shoulders, one eye open and one eye lost in the depths, Odin broods over all he knows and all he fears. 4. Odin, Thor, and the gods of Asgard. With the cosmos structured and Yggdrasil rooted, the gods established their realm. Asgard, the shining city that would house the divine and serve as the seat of cosmic order. The name means enclosure of the Aesir, suggesting that even in their realm, the gods felt the need for walls, for protection, for boundaries between themselves and the forces that threatened them. Asgard was built in the center of the cosmos, accessible from Midgard via Bifrost, the rainbow bridge that shimmered with impossible colors. The watchman Heimdall, whose senses were so acute he could hear grass growing, stood guard at the bridge's end, ready to blow his horn Gjallarhorn if enemies approached. Bifrost would eventually shatter during Ragnarok when the armies of the giants thundered across it. Within Asgard rose many halls. The greatest was Valaskjalf, containing Odin's throne Hlidskjalf, from which the Allfather could see into all 9 worlds. But Odin had another hall as well, more famous, Valhalla, the Hall of the Slain, where warriors who died bravely in battle would feast and fight until Ragnarok called them to their final battle. Valhalla deserves special attention because it reveals so much about Norse values. The word literally means Hall of the Slain. It was a massive structure, according to Snorri's description, with 540 doors, each wide enough for 800 warriors to march through side by side. Its rafters were spears, its roof was shingled with shields. Chainmail served as benches. This was a hall built for and by warriors. What happened in Valhalla? Each day, the Einherjar, the chosen slain, warriors selected by Odin's Valkyries from those who fell in battle, would wake and arm themselves. They would spend the day fighting, practicing for Ragnarok. They would wound and kill each other in glorious combat. And then, at day's end, they would all rise healed, their wounds vanished, ready to feast. A boar named Saerimnir was slaughtered each evening and cooked. Every warrior ate his fill, and each morning the boar was alive again. They drank mead that flowed endlessly from the udders of a goat named Heidrun. Endless battle, endless feast, endless drink. This was the Viking idea of paradise. But not all the dead went to Valhalla. Only half of those who died in battle were selected by Odin's Valkyries. The other half went to Freyja's Hall Folkvanga. Those who died of illness or old age went to Hel, the realm of the dead. This multiplicity of afterlives is worth considering. Unlike Christian theology with its heaven-hell binary, Norse cosmology offered several destinations based not on moral worth, but on manner of death. Now let us meet the major gods who populated Asgard. For understanding Norse mythology requires understanding who these gods were, what they represented, and how they related to each other. Odin, called Allfather, was king of the Aesir and the most complex figure in the pantheon. He was god of wisdom, poetry, death, magic, runes, war, and the gallows. He had many names. Snorri lists over 200, each reflecting a different aspect of his nature. Grimnir, the Hooded One, Har, High One, Ygg, Terror, and dozens more. He was ancient, one-eyed, often depicted with a long beard, wearing a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his face. He carried the spear Gungnir, which never missed its mark. His ravens Hugin, Thought, and Munin, Memory, flew across the 9 worlds each day, gathering information and returning to perch on his shoulders, whispering their findings into his ears. The Prose Edda tells us that Odin sent them out at dawn, and they returned at dinner time, bringing him news of everything happening in all the realms. Because of this, Odin was called Raven God. His wolves Geri and Freki accompanied him. Interestingly, Odin himself never ate food. He gave all the meat from his table to his wolves, sustaining himself only on wine, which served him as both food and drink. His 8-legged horse Sleipnir could ride to Hel and back, could gallop through air as easily as over land. This remarkable steed was actually Loki's offspring, born after Loki shapeshifted into a mare to distract a builder's stallion. But that's a story we'll come to later. Odin was obsessed with learning, with knowing, with accumulating all possible wisdom. Not for its own sake, but because he knew about Ragnarok, knew he would die, and hoped that perhaps, with enough knowledge, he might find a way to change fate, though deep down he knew he couldn't. He wandered the worlds in disguise, testing humans, gathering information, consulting with seers and the dead. He practiced Satyr magic, a form of shamanic divination traditionally associated with women, bringing scorn upon himself from some, quarters for taking up what was considered an unmanly practice. But Odin didn't care about social judgment. If knowledge could be gained, he would pursue it, regardless of cost. Odin was not a nice god. He was capricious, could be cruel, broke oaths when it suited him, caused conflict between humans for his own purposes, played favorites among warriors, and then abandoned them when convenient. He was known to stir up wars simply to increase the number of warriors dying in battle, so more would come to Valhalla for Ragnarök. But he was also magnificent, tragic, and worthy of awe. He had sacrificed so much. His eye, his comfort during 9 days hanging from Yggdrasil, his masculine reputation by practicing Satyr, all in service of his impossible goal, to accumulate enough wisdom to perhaps avert the doom he knew was coming. Frigg, Odin's wife, was queen of the Aesir, goddess of marriage, motherhood, and foresight. She could see the future but rarely shared what she saw, carrying the burden of foreknowledge in silence. She sat spinning at her wheel in her hall Fensalir, weaving the fates of mortals. Her relationship with Odin was complex. They were partners in ruling, but Odin was often away wandering, and sources hint at affairs on both sides. Her most famous and tragic story involves her son Balder, where her attempt to protect him through extracting oaths from all things would fail due to one seemingly insignificant oversight. Thor, Odin's son by the earth goddess Jord, Earth herself personified, was god of thunder, storms, strength, and the protection of both gods and humans. Unlike his father, Thor was straightforward, honest, quick to anger, but also quick to laugh. He represented the more direct, physical approach to problems, where Odin would scheme and manipulate, Thor would simply smash. He was the gods' champion, the one they called when force was needed. He traveled constantly across all the realms, killing giants, defending settlements, keeping chaos at bay through sheer physical might. Thor wielded Mjolnir, the magical hammer forged by the dwarfs Sindri and Brokkr. This weapon was possibly the most famous object in Norse mythology. It never missed its target, would strike with the force of lightning, and always returned to Thor's hand after being thrown. The hammer had a flaw. Its handle was too short, barely long enough to grip with one hand, because Loki had interfered with its forging. To compensate, Thor wore iron gloves called Jarngriper that helped him grip the short handle, and a belt called Meggingjord that doubled his already immense strength when he fastened it. Thor rode in a chariot pulled by 2 goats, Tangrisnir, Teeth-barer, and Tangnjoster, Teeth-grinder, whom he could slaughter for food at night and resurrect each morning by waving Mjolnir over their bones and hide, as long as the bones remained unbroken. One myth tells of a farmer's son who broke one of the goat's leg bones to get at the marrow, causing the resurrected goat to be lame, which enraged Thor until he accepted the farmer's children as servants in compensation. Thor was married to Sif, whose golden hair was one of the great beauties of Asgard, until Loki, in a typical thoughtless prank, cut it all off while she slept. Thor nearly killed Loki for this offense, and Loki had to commission the dwarfs to forge new hair for Sif made of actual gold that would grow like natural hair. This incident led to the creation of several of the gods' greatest treasures, including Mjolnir itself. Thor was the most popular god among common people, the most worshipped, the most beloved. While Odin was the god of kings and poets and those who sought wisdom, Thor was everyone's god, the defender of the ordinary, the one who kept the giants' chaos from overwhelming civilization. Farmers called on him for good weather and fertile fields. Sailors invoked him for safe voyages. Warriors asked for his strength in battle. He represented the simple, straightforward virtues that everyday people could understand and appreciate: strength, courage, loyalty, the protection of home and family. At Ragnarök, Thor would face his ancient enemy Ginnungagap, the world serpent, for the final time. He would kill the serpent with a mighty blow from Mjolnir. But the dying serpent would exhale its venom one last time, and Thor would stumble away, taking 9 steps before falling dead from the poison. Even in death, he would be victorious, having eliminated one of the greatest threats to the world. Balder, son of Odin and Frigg, was the most beautiful of the gods, associated with light, purity, and joy. Everyone loved Balder except Loki. He was so pure that light seemed to shine from him. His death, which we'll explore in detail later, would be the first great catastrophe leading to Ragnarök, the moment when it became clear that the gods could not prevent the fate that awaited them. Tyr was the god of law, justice, and brave self-sacrifice. He was one-handed, having lost his right hand, his sword hand, when the gods bound the wolf Fenrir. The gods had tricked Fenrir into being bound with an unbreakable ribbon, and Fenrir had demanded that one god place a hand in his mouth as a pledge of good faith. Only Tyr was brave enough, knowing he would lose his hand when Fenrir bit down after discovering the god's treachery. His sacrifice enabled the binding that would hold Fenrir until Ragnarök, and he bore the loss without complaint. Tyr was ancient, possibly older than Odin in some traditions. His name is related to the Proto-Indo-European Sky Father deity, suggesting he may have been more prominent in earlier Germanic religion before Odin's cult rose to dominance. By the Viking Age, his importance had waned, but he remained symbolically powerful as the god who embodied honor, law, and the willingness to sacrifice oneself for the greater good. Tuesday, Tyr's Day, is named after him. Loki deserves special attention because he's unlike any other figure in Norse mythology. He was not properly a god. His parents were giants, Farboti and Laufey, but he was Odin's blood brother. They had mixed blood in a ritual, creating an unbreakable bond. And so he lived in Asgard, participated in the gods' councils, traveled with them on adventures. He was clever, witty, charming, and utterly untrustworthy. He was a shapeshifter par excellence, becoming whatever form suited his purposes, male or female, animal or human, young or old, beautiful or hideous. He was called the trickster, but that understates his role. He was the force of disruption, the agent of chaos living within order. Early in the myths, he helped the gods as often as he harmed them. When Thor's hammer was stolen by the giant Thrym, it was Loki who devised the plan to get it back, involving Thor dressing as a bride, a story beloved for its humor. When Sif's hair was cut, Loki replaced it with even better magical hair. When the gods needed treasures, Loki manipulated the dwarfs into crafting them. But Loki also caused constant problems, and as time passed in the mythic timeline, his mischief darkened into malevolence. He fathered 3 monsters by the giantess Angrboda: Fenrir the wolf, who would kill Odin; Jörmungandr the world serpent, who would kill Thor; and Hel, who became goddess of the dead. He orchestrated Balder's death through deception and manipulation. After Balder died, Loki attended a feast of the gods and mocked each of them in turn, insulting Odin, accusing Frigg of adultery, calling Freya promiscuous, each insult striking at deep truths the gods preferred not to acknowledge. Eventually, the gods bound Loki beneath the earth as punishment. They took his son Narfi or Nari, killed him, and used his entrails, transformed into iron chains, to bind Loki to 3 rocks. Then they positioned a serpent above him so that venom would drip onto his face. His wife Sigyn remained loyal, holding a bowl to catch the venom drops. But eventually the bowl fills and she must turn to empty it. And when she does, venom strikes Loki's face. He writhes in agony, and his thrashing causes earthquakes across Midgard. This would be his fate until Ragnarok, when all bonds would break. Then Loki would be free, and he would lead the armies of chaos against the gods who had tortured him. His transformation from helpful trickster to malevolent destroyer would be complete. At the final battle, he and Heimdall would kill each other, eternal opposites meeting in mutual destruction. Freyr, the Vanir god who came to Asgard after the war between the Aesir and Vanir, was associated with peace, prosperity, fertility, of humans, animals, and crops, sunshine and rain. He was one of the most important gods for agricultural peoples, the one who ensured good harvests and fertile livestock. He owned a magical ship called Skidbladnir that could hold all the gods and their weapons, yet fold up small enough to fit in a pocket. He rode a boar with gold bristles named Gullinbursti, whose bristles shone bright enough to light up the darkest night. Freyr possessed a sword that fought on its own, striking without being guided, but he gave this sword away to his servant Skirnir as payment for helping him woo the giantess Gerda. Freyr had fallen desperately in love with Gerda after seeing her from afar, and he pined for her so intensely that he grew pale and weak. Skirnir agreed to go to Jotunheim and persuade Gerda to marry Freyr, but only if Freyr would give him his self-fighting sword. Freyr agreed, so desperate was his love, and Skirnir succeeded in the mission through a combination of persuasion and threats. This gift would prove fatal at Ragnarök. When Freyr faced Surtur, the fire giant from Muspelheim, he would have no weapon to match Surtur's flaming sword. He would fight with a stag's antler, with whatever he could find, but it wouldn't be enough. Surtur would cut him down, and the god of peace and fertility would fall. It's a poignant tragedy. Freyr died because he loved, because he sacrificed his greatest weapon for a chance at happiness with the woman he desired. Freyja, Freyr's twin sister, was goddess of love, beauty, fertility, and war. She was perhaps the most complex female figure in Norse mythology, embodying aspects that later Christian-influenced interpreters found difficult to reconcile. She was a practitioner and teacher of Sida magic, the shamanic divination that Odin learned from her. She wore a magnificent necklace called Brisingamen, which 4 dwarfs forged for her in exchange for her spending a night with each of them. A story that has always existed in the sources, but whose exact meaning remains debated by scholars. Freyja had a feathered cloak that allowed her to fly in the form of a falcon. She rode in a chariot pulled by cats, not domestic house cats, but large forest cats, or possibly lynxes. She wept tears of gold when her husband Odur wandered away. Odur's identity is mysterious. Some scholars think he might be another name for Odin, while others believe he was a separate figure now lost to us. Most importantly for understanding her power, Freyja claimed half of the slain warriors, choosing before Odin's Valkyries could make their selections. These warriors went to her hall Folkvanga rather than to Valhalla. The sources tell us little about what happened in Folkvanga, but the fact that Freyja had first choice of the slain suggests her hall may have been considered even more desirable than Valhalla in some traditions. Freyja was beautiful, powerful, sexually autonomous in ways that made male poets uncomfortable, and absolutely central to Norse religion. In some regions, she may have been worshipped more fervently than Odin, particularly among women, but also among men who valued fertility and prosperity as much as wisdom and war. She represented female power that didn't derive from being someone's wife or mother, power that existed independent of male authority. Heimdall was the watchman of the gods, guardian of Bifrost Bridge connecting Asgard to Midgard. His senses were impossibly acute. He could hear grass growing and wool lengthening on sheep's backs. He could see 100 leagues in darkness as clearly as in daylight. He needed less sleep than a bird, able to rest briefly and remain alert. He would blow his horn Gjallarhorn when Ragnarök began, its sound carrying across all 9 worlds, summoning gods and heroes to the final battle. Heimdall's origins were mysterious. He was called the whitest of the Aesir, and was said to have been born of 9 mothers, possibly 9 giantesses, or perhaps personifications of the 9 waves of the sea. He embodied both the connection and the boundary between Asgard and everything else, standing at the edge, watching, guarding, ensuring that what should not pass could not pass. Yet he was also the first god to cross boundaries, as he would do when he descended to Midgard and fathered the 3 classes of humans. Though this story comes from a single source and may not have been universally accepted. He and Loki were eternal enemies, opposing forces who would kill each other at Ragnarok. The Guardian and the Chaos Bringer, order and disorder, meeting in final combat where neither would survive. There were many other gods. Bragi, god of poetry. Idun, keeper of the apples of youth that prevented the gods from aging. Njordr, Freya and Freyja's father, god of sea and wind. Skadi, goddess of hunting and skiing, and dozens more. But these were the major players, the ones whose stories shaped the mythology, whose actions would determine the cosmos's fate. The pantheon was a family, but a dysfunctional one, full of rivalries, affairs, murders, and betrayals. They were not omnipotent. They could be wounded, tricked, could fail. They aged, though Idun's apples temporarily reversed the aging process. They could die, not from old age but from violence, and they would die en masse at Ragnarök. They were powerful beings who had created order from chaos and who struggled constantly to maintain that order against enemies without and weaknesses within. They were admirable and flawed, heroic and petty, wise and foolish, more like idealized humans than like the distant, perfect gods of some other religions. And ruling over them, orchestrating from his throne or wandering the worlds in disguise, always learning, always planning, always aware that everything he built would eventually burn, sat Odin, the All-Father, brooding on fate and wondering if knowledge could avert the doom he saw coming. The gods' treasures and Loki's mischief. Norse mythology is filled with wondrous objects, magical weapons, rings that multiply themselves, ships that can be folded to fit in a pocket. These weren't random fantasy props, but essential elements of the gods' power and identity. They also embodied a crucial Norse insight. Even the gods needed help. They couldn't create everything themselves. They relied on dwarfs for the most powerful items, on giants for certain kinds of knowledge, on each other for support. Our story begins with Sif, Thor's wife, whose hair was the color of ripened wheat, shining gold, cascading down her back in waves of amber and honey. It was her most striking feature, renowned throughout the 9 worlds. And one morning, Sif woke to find it gone. Someone had cut her beautiful hair while she slept, had sheared her head completely bald. Thor was not a subtle god. When he learned what had happened, his rage was terrifying. He knew immediately who the culprit was. No one else would dare. No one else could have gotten close enough. He tracked down Loki and seized him, threatening to break every bone in his body. Loki, realizing he'd gone too far, swore he would fix the problem. he would travel to Svartalfheim, realm of the dwarves, and commission new hair for Sif, hair made of actual gold that would grow like real hair. The dwarves were master craftsmen, capable of working with any material, imbuing objects with magical properties. They lived underground, worked their forges in darkness, and turned to stone if caught in sunlight. Their craftsmanship was unparalleled. No god could forge what dwarfs could forge. Loki went first to the sons of Ivaldi, dwarf brothers renowned for their skill. They agreed to help and set to work, heating gold until it liquefied, drawing it into impossibly fine threads, weaving it with techniques known only to them. The result was remarkable: hair made of real gold that shone like sunlight on wheat fields, that moved and flowed like natural hair, that would attach to Sif's scalp and begin growing immediately. But the sons of Ivaldi didn't stop there. While their forge was hot, they crafted 2 additional treasures. Skidbladnir, the ship that would become Freya's. This vessel was large enough to hold all the gods and their weapons, yet could be folded up small enough to fit in a pouch. It always had favorable wind and could sail on air or water. Gungnir, the spear that would become Odin's primary weapon. This spear never missed its target. Once thrown, it would strike what it was aimed at and return to the thrower's hand. Some sources suggest it was also engraved with runes, that oaths sworn on Gungnir could not be broken. Loki left the sons of Ivaldi's forge with these 3 treasures, pleased with himself. But on his way back, he encountered another dwarf, Brokkr, and couldn't resist boasting about the marvels he carried. Brokkr scoffed. His brother Sindri could craft even more wondrous objects. Loki, in typical fashion, made a bet. If Sindri could craft 3 treasures that surpassed these, Loki would forfeit his head. Brokkr and Loki traveled to Sindri's forge. Sindri agreed to the challenge. But crafting these items required perfect concentration. Sindri told Brokkr to work the bellows continuously, never stopping, no matter what happened. If the bellows stopped even for a moment, the work would be ruined. Sindri placed a pigskin in the forge and began the spell. Then he left, trusting Brokkr to keep the bellows going. As soon as Sindri was gone, a fly landed on Brokkr's hand and bit him, painfully, drawing blood. Brokkr grimaced but kept working. Loki had shapeshifted, trying to sabotage the work. The fly bit again, harder, on Brokkr's neck. Still, Brokkr continued. When Sindri returned and removed the pigskin from the forge, he had created Gullinbursti, a living boar with bristles of pure gold that glowed bright enough to light up the darkest night. For the second treasure, Sindri placed gold in the forge. Again the fly appeared, this time biting Brokkr's face so painfully that tears came to his eyes. But Brokkr remembered Sindri's warning and continued. When Sindri returned, he had created Draupnir, a ring from which 8 new rings of equal weight and purity would drip every 9th night, multiplying its wealth endlessly. For the third treasure, Sindri placed iron in the forge and gave Brokkr the most emphatic warning yet. Do not stop for even an instant. Sindri left. The fly returned, landing between Brokkr's eyes and biting so fiercely that blood ran down his face, blinding him. In agony, Brokkr moved one hand from the bellows for just a second to brush the blood away. That 1-second pause was enough. When Sindri returned and pulled the iron from the forge, he had created Mjolnir, a hammer of devastating power, but the handle was too short, barely long enough to grip with one hand, because the bellows had stopped during the crucial final moment. Despite this flaw, Mjolnir was astonishing. It would strike with the force of thunder, would never miss, and would always return to the thrower's hand. Thor would wield it to kill giants, defend Asgard, sanctify marriages, and eventually slay Jörmungandr at Ragnarök. Brokkr and Loki returned to Asgard. The gods assembled to judge which set of treasures was more impressive. The golden hair was given to Sif. Skidbladnir went to Freyja, Gungnir to Odin. Then Brokkr displayed his treasures: Gullinbursti for Freyja, Draupnir for Odin, and Mjolnir for Thor. The gods deliberated and decided that Mjolnir was the most valuable because it could defend Asgard against the giants. Despite its short handle, it was the greatest prize. Brokkr had won. Now Brokkr demanded payment: Loki's head. Loki tried to weasel out. He'd bet his head, yes, but not his neck. Brokkr could have the head if he could take it without touching the neck. The gods, who had mixed feelings about Loki, told him he'd have to pay. But they also agreed that Brokkr couldn't take Loki's head without damaging the neck. Brokkr, frustrated but pragmatic, chose a different punishment. He would sew Loki's lips shut. He used a dwarf-made awl to pierce Loki's lips, then stitched them together with a leather thong. Loki suffered, but eventually got free, the stitches tearing through his lips, leaving them scarred. This story, like so many in Norse mythology, has no clear moral. Loki's cruel prank led, through a chain of events involving lies and sabotage, to the gods acquiring weapons and tools they desperately needed. Was it worth it? The myth simply presents the events, acknowledging that good and bad consequences can flow from the same source. 6. The binding of Fenrir: fear, prophecy, and sacrifice. Some myths are adventures, some are explanations, and some are tragedies in slow motion, stories where every character knows what's coming but can do nothing to prevent it. The Binding of Fenrir is such a story, a tale of fear, prophecy, lies, sacrifice, and the terrible price of trying to prevent fate. Fenrir was one of Loki's children, conceived with the giantess Angrboda, whose name means anguish-boding or grief-bearer. Loki fathered 3 beings with her, each destined to play a crucial role at Ragnarök. Jörmungandr, the world serpent, would grow so large that he encircled Midgard, biting his own tail. Thor and Jörmungandr were eternal enemies, fated to kill each other at Ragnarök. Hel, a being described as half-living and half-dead, would become goddess of the realm of the dead, ruling over those who died of age or illness rather than in battle. Fenrir, a wolf, would grow larger and stronger than any living thing, would break free at Ragnarök, and would devour Odin during the final battle. The gods, through prophecy or perhaps through Odin's visions, knew about these children and what they would become. They could not allow such dangerous beings to roam free. Odin had Jörmungandr thrown into the ocean surrounding Midgard, thinking the serpent would drown or at least be contained. Instead, Jörmungandr thrived, grew, fed on whales and ships, eventually becoming so vast that he could circle the entire world. Odin sent Hel to Niflheim, to the realm of the dead, making her its goddess. As for Fenrir, Fenrir came to Asgard as a wolf pup. Perhaps Loki brought him. Perhaps the gods summoned him, wanting to keep him close where they could watch him. In the early days, Fenrir was not yet dangerous. He was large, but controllable. Only Tyr, the god of war and justice, was brave enough to feed him, bringing the wolf his daily meat. But Fenrir grew, and kept growing. He became immense, powerful, with jaws that could swallow the moon. And the gods became afraid. They decided Fenrir had to be bound. If they could chain him, he couldn't threaten Asgard, couldn't fulfill the prophecy. But how do you bind a being whose strength exceeds even Thor's? The gods' first attempt involved a massive chain called Lyding. They came to Fenrir with the chain and suggested a test of strength. They would bind him, and he would break free, proving his power. Fenrir, young and confident, agreed. They wrapped Lyding around him and stepped back. Fenrir stretched, the chain shattered like twigs, and everyone laughed nervously. They forged an even stronger chain, twice as heavy as Lyding, called Dromi. Again they approached Fenrir, framing it as a challenge. Fenrir, suspicious now but unwilling to appear cowardly, agreed. He struggled longer this time, but eventually Dromi too shattered. Again, nervous laughter from the gods. They were running out of options. Odin sent Skirnir, Freya's servant, to Svartalfheim with a message for the dwarfs. Create a binding that nothing could break. The dwarfs crafted Gleipnir, and it was not a chain at all. It was a ribbon, thin as silk, smooth as water, soft to the touch. But it was made from 6 impossible things: the sound of a cat's footfall, the beard of a woman, the roots of a mountain, the sinews of a bear, the breath of a fish, the spittle of a bird. Each ingredient was something that didn't exist, couldn't exist. By taking what wasn't there, by weaving absence into presence, the dwarves created something paradoxical and unbreakable. This is why, according to Norse belief, cats walk silently and women have no beards. The dwarfs used up these impossible materials in forging Gleipnir. The gods brought Gleipnir to Fenrir, playfully suggesting one more test. But Fenrir was no fool. He'd watched their fear grow. He looked at the thin ribbon and immediately suspected treachery. If I cannot break this ribbon, then I won't be able to free myself, and you'll leave me bound forever. I don't trust you. The gods protested. It's just a ribbon. If you can't break it, which is impossible given your strength, we'll free you immediately, we promise. But Fenrir heard the lies in their voices. So Fenrir proposed a condition. I'll let you bind me, but only if one of you places your hand in my mouth as a pledge of good faith. If you're telling the truth and will free me if I can't break it, you have nothing to fear. But if you're lying, whoever puts their hand in my mouth will lose it when I bite down. The gods looked at each other. None wanted to sacrifice their hand. They knew they were lying, knew they planned to leave Fenrir bound forever, knew that whoever stepped forward would be maimed. But if no one volunteered, Fenrir would refuse, would eventually attack Asgard, would kill Odin as prophesied. Someone had to pay the price. Tyr stepped forward. He was the god of law, justice, and the keeping of oaths. He understood duty. He understood sacrifice. He had been the one who fed Fenrir daily, who had formed something like a relationship with the wolf. He walked to Fenrir and placed his right hand, his sword hand, his fighting hand, into the wolf's mouth. With Tyr's hand between his teeth, Fenrir allowed the gods to bind him with Gleipnir. They wrapped the silken ribbon around his legs, around his body. Then they told Fenrir to break free. Fenrir struggled. He thrashed and pulled with all his impossible strength. But Gleipnir held. The more he struggled, the tighter it became. It would not break. He bit down. Tyr's hand was severed at the wrist. The god gritted his teeth against the pain, but made no sound, accepting the cost of his deception. From that day forward, Tyr was one-handed, known as Tyr the One-Handed. The gods took Fenrir to a remote island called Lyngvi in the lake Amsvatnir. They passed Gleipnir through a massive boulder called Gjöll, then anchored that boulder deep in the earth with another stone called Thviti, driven so far down it would never come loose. To keep Fenrir's jaws open, he was still snapping at them, they placed a sword vertically in his mouth, point up through the upper jaw, pommel braced against the lower jaw. He couldn't close it, couldn't bite, could only drool. The drool formed a river called Varn, flowing from his mouth into the lake. There he would remain until Ragnarök released him, until Heimdall's horn shattered Gleipnir, until Fenrir could join the armies of chaos and fulfill his destiny by devouring Odin. This story is deeply troubling from almost any ethical standpoint. The gods see a threat, and instead of treating it as an individual who might choose differently, they treat it as fate already fulfilled. They lie, cheat, break sacred bonds, betray a being who had never actually harmed them. They sacrifice one of their own. Tyr loses his hand to accomplish this imprisonment. And in binding Fenrir, they guarantee the very outcome they sought to prevent, because Fenrir's rage, his justified desire for vengeance, will fuel his actions at Ragnarok. Norse mythology doesn't shy away from this complexity. Tyr is remembered as the bravest of the gods, specifically because he knowingly sacrificed his hand for the greater good, because he bore the cost of a necessary evil, because he maintained honor even while committing dishonorable acts. His sacrifice embodied the Norse concept of courage, doing what must be done, no matter the personal cost, even when what must be done is morally ambiguous. Fenrir, meanwhile, waits. He waits on his island, bound by impossible ribbon, mouth forced open, drool forming a river, understanding now that the gods are not to be trusted, that oaths mean nothing when fear is involved. He waits, and his waiting is rage, and that rage will be terrible when it's finally unleashed. The death of Balder, when light began to fade. If there is a single moment in Norse mythology when the trajectory toward Ragnarok becomes inevitable, when the possibility of averting the end dies, it is the death of Balder. Balder was beloved, the best of the gods, the one who represented everything good about divine order, and his murder, orchestrated by Loki's treachery, revealed that even in Asgard, evil could triumph over innocence, that even the most protected being could be destroyed, that love was not enough to prevent loss. Balder, son of Odin and Frigg, was described in the sources with language usually reserved for saints. So fair of face and bright that light shone from him. According to Snorri, he was wise, eloquent, and merciful. Everyone loved him. Gods, humans, nature itself. He was associated with light and purity. Then Balder began having nightmares. Every night, dreams of death, dreams of darkness, dreams that filled him with dread. When he told the other gods, they were deeply disturbed. Balder shouldn't be dreaming of death. He was immortal, protected, beloved by fate. Frigg, Balder's mother, was especially terrified because she possessed prophetic knowledge and understood the dream's significance. Frigg decided to protect Balder through comprehensive magical means. She would extract oaths from everything in existence, making them all swear never to harm Balder. She traveled across all 9 worlds. She spoke to fire and water, to metal and stone, to every species of tree and plant, to every type of beast and bird, to diseases and poisons, to everything that could possibly cause harm. And everything swore, "We will never harm Balder." With these oaths secured, Balder became effectively invincible. The gods, relieved and amused, invented a game. They would throw things at Balder, stones, arrows, axes, and watch as nothing could hurt him. Weapons bounced off harmlessly. Rocks missed. Fire wouldn't burn him. It became entertainment, a celebration of Balder's protection. But Loki watched these games with different eyes. He saw not celebration, but challenge. He'd always resented how much the gods loved Balder. Loki was chaos, and Balder was order. Loki was shadow, and Balder was light. Something in Loki decided that Balder had to die. Loki knew about Frigg's oaths. But Loki was thorough when he wanted something. He transformed himself into an old woman and approached Frigg. In disguise, he struck up a conversation about Baldur's invincibility. Surely everything would keep its oath never to harm him. "Everything has sworn," Frigg replied, proud of her work. "Every single thing?" The old woman pressed. "Not one exception?" And here Frigg made her fatal error. She admitted there was one exception. East of Valhalla grows a little plant called mistletoe. It seemed too young and insignificant to swear an oath, so I didn't bother asking it. The old woman thanked Frigg and left. Loki returned to his true form, went to where mistletoe grew, cut a sprig, and carried it back to where the gods were playing their game. Hörder, Baldur's blind brother, stood apart from the games, unable to participate because he couldn't see where Baldur was standing. Loki approached him. "Why aren't you honoring your brother by participating?" "I can't see him," Hörder replied, "and I have no weapon anyway." "I'll help you," Loki said. "Here's a small twig, just a mistletoe branch. I'll guide your hand and you can throw it like everyone else." Hörder, trusting because he had no reason not to, agreed. Loki placed the mistletoe dart in Hörder's hand, guided his arm, helped him aim. Hörder threw. The dart struck Baldur. He fell, and the laughter stopped. Baldur was dead. The best of the gods, the beloved one, the bringer of light, dead from a scrap of mistletoe, thrown by his own blind brother who didn't know what he was doing, guided by Loki's malicious hand. The silence that followed was worse than any sound. Then came the screaming, the disbelief, the horror. Frigg wailed. The gods stood frozen, and Hörder, realizing what had happened, was struck by shock so profound he couldn't speak. They brought Baldur's body to the shore. They would give him a ship burial. They chose Hringhorni, the greatest of ships. They placed his body on the ship with treasures, with his horse killed and placed beside him. Thor stepped forward to sanctify the funeral with Mjolnir. They lit the funeral pyre. Flames engulfed Hringhorni. Baldur's body burned. His spirit descended to hell. But the gods were not willing to accept this death. If Baldur was in Hell's realm, perhaps Hel herself could be convinced to release him. Hermodr, one of Odin's sons, volunteered to ride to Hel and negotiate. He took Sleipnir and rode for 9 days and nights down dark roads, across the bridge Gjallabru that spans the river Gjöll. Inside Hel's realm, he found Baldur at the high seat, honored even in death. Hermodr begged Hel to release Baldur. Hel considered and made an offer. "If all things in the world, living and dead, weep for Baldur, I will release him. But if any one thing refuses to weep, he will remain with me." Hermodr rode back with this message. The gods immediately sent messengers to everything in existence, asking all to weep for Baldur. And everything did. People wept, animals wept, the earth wept, stones wept, trees wept, metals wept. Everything mourned Baldur. But as the messengers traveled back, they encountered a giantess sitting in a cave. Her name was Thuk, which means thanks in Old Norse, though the name drips with sarcasm. The messengers asked her to weep for Baldur. She refused. "Thuk will weep dry tears for Baldur's death. I had no benefit from him living, and I'll have none from him dead. Let Hel keep what she has." With one being refusing to mourn, Hel's condition was not met. Baldur could not return. He would remain in Hel's realm until after Ragnarok. And who was Thuk? The sources heavily suggest it was Loki in disguise. He had orchestrated Baldur's death and then prevented his return, ensuring the tragedy was complete and irreversible. The gods' response reveals the darkness at mythology's heart. They knew Loki was responsible. They hunted him down. Loki fled, hiding in a remote waterfall, but the gods found him. They took him to a cave deep beneath the earth. They took his son Narfi or Nari and killed him, transforming his entrails into iron chains. With these chains made from his own child's guts, they bound Loki to 3 rocks. Then they placed a serpent above him, positioned so venom would drip from its fangs onto Loki's face. Loki's wife Sigyn remained with him, holding a bowl to catch the venom drops. But eventually the bowl fills and she must turn away to empty it. When she does, venom strikes Loki's face and he writhes in agony, his thrashing causing earthquakes across Midgard. This would be his fate until Ragnarok broke all bonds and freed him to lead the armies of chaos against the gods who had tortured him. Baldur's death was the first shadow of Ragnarok, the moment when the light began to fade from Asgard, when the possibility of preventing the end died along with the most innocent of the gods. The trajectory toward the final battle had become inevitable. All that remained was the waiting, the slow march toward the moment when Heimdall would blow his horn and everything would burn. Trumgent. Ragnarok. The twilight of the gods. Everything we've discussed, the creation from Ymir's corpse, the establishment of Asgard, the binding of Fenrir, the death of Baldur, the punishment of Loki, has been building toward this moment. Ragnarok, the fate of the gods, the twilight of the gods, the end of everything the gods built, the triumph of chaos over order, the death of nearly everyone we've met, and the burning of the world. The word Ragnarök comes from Old Norse meaning fate of the gods. In an apparent play on words, some pieces of Old Norse literature also refer to it as Ragnarök, twilight of the gods. The event was also occasionally referred to as Aldarök, fate of mankind. For the Vikings, this was a prophecy of what was to come at some unspecified time in the future. But it had profound ramifications for how they understood the world in their own time. If even the gods would one day die, if even Asgard would burn, then nothing was permanent, nothing was guaranteed, and the only sensible response was to live with courage and die with dignity. The prophecy of Ragnarök appears most fully in the poem Völuspá in the poetic Edda, where a Völva recounts to Odin everything she knows about the past, present, and future. Much of what we know about Ragnarök comes from her prophecy and from Snorri's synthesis in the prose Edda. Ragnarök will not come without warning. The gods will know their time is near when certain signs appear. The first and greatest omen was the death of Baldur, which has already occurred. Following Baldur's death, the mortal world will face Fimbulwinter. The Great Winter, unlike any other the world has seen. This will be 3 successive winters with no summers in between them. Snow will blow in from all directions, covering everything in frost. The harsh winter will bring endless snow, making food and resources scarce. Mankind will plummet into violence and despair. Brothers will kill brothers, fathers will kill sons, and the natural bonds of families will be torn apart as the basic need to survive ravages all. During Fimbulwinter, 2 wolves that have been chasing the sun and moon since the beginning of time will finally catch their prey. The wolf Skjöll has pursued the sun across the sky every day since creation. The wolf Hati Hrodvitnisson has chased the moon. At the onset of Ragnarök, these wolves will finally devour the sun and moon, plunging the world into darkness. The stars will disappear from the sky. The world will know only cold and dark. Then the earth itself will begin to shake. Terrible earthquakes will destroy the bonds and shackles that had contained the forces of darkness. These tremors are caused by Loki, who has been bound beneath the earth with venom dripping onto his face. As Ragnarök approaches, his bonds will break. The earthquakes will become even more violent as he tears himself free. After eons of torture, Loki will stand free once more, filled with rage against the gods who bound him. The earthquakes will also free Fenrir, The great wolf, bound on his island with Gleipnir, will break his impossible bonds. The ribbon made from 6 impossible things will snap. The sword holding his jaws open will fall away. Fenrir will rise, his mouth gaping so wide that his upper jaw touches the sky and his lower jaw scrapes the earth. Fire will blaze from his eyes and nostrils. He will run across Midgard toward Asgard, ready to fulfill the prophecy. In the ocean, Jörmungandr, the world serpent, will release his tail from his mouth and writhe toward land. His movements will cause massive tidal waves that flood the world. The seas will rage and overflow, drowning coastlines, destroying ships, turning the ordered world into chaos. From the south, from Muspelheim, will come Surtur, the fire giant who existed before creation and will survive after its destruction. He will lead the sons of Muspelheim, an army of fire giants, across Bifrost. The rainbow bridge will shatter under their weight, collapsing into fragments. Surtur carries his flaming sword, bright as the sun itself, a weapon that has waited since before time began to burn the world. From the east, in the realm of giants, a ship will set sail. This is Naglfar, the ship of nails, constructed entirely from the fingernails and toenails of the dead. The sources tell us this is why it was traditional to trim the nails of corpses. Every nail not trimmed added to Naglfar's construction, hastening Ragnarök. This grotesque vessel will be steered by the giant Hrym and will carry an army of giants toward Asgard. And Loki himself will not merely break free. He will become a leader of chaos. He will steer another ship filled with the inhabitants of Hell, the dead who rise to join the battle. Loki, who once helped the gods, who was Odin's blood brother, who lived in Asgard and traveled with Thor, will now lead the armies of giants, monsters, and the dead against everything he once protected. On the field of Vigrid, a plain that measures 100 leagues in every direction, the final battle will take place. This is where gods and giants, order and chaos, cosmos and entropy will meet for the last time. Heimdall, watchman of the gods, will stand at the shattered remains of Bifrost and blow his horn Gjallarhorn. The sound will carry across all 9 worlds, calling the gods to battle, summoning the Einherjar from Valhalla, announcing that the moment they have prepared for since the world's creation has finally arrived. The gods will arm themselves. Odin will don his golden helmet and take up Gungnir. Thor will grip Mjolnir and fasten Megingjord. Tyr will fight one-handed but bravely. Freyr will face battle without his sword. The Einherjar will pour forth from Valhalla's 540 doors, 800 warriors through each doorway, marching in perfect formation toward a battle they know they cannot win. The gods will decide to go to battle, even though they know what the prophecies have foretold. They will fight more valiantly than anyone has ever fought before. But it will not be enough. Odin will fight Fenrir. By his side will be the Einherjar, his chosen warriors whom he has kept in Valhalla for this moment. Odin and the champions of men will fight more valiantly than anyone has ever fought before. But prophecy cannot be denied. Fenrir will swallow Odin whole, armor and spear and all. The All-Father, who sacrificed his eye for wisdom, who hung from Yggdrasil for 9 days, who learned the runes and mastered Seidr magic, who ruled Asgard and guided the gods. He will die in the wolf's jaws. But Odin's death will not go unavenged. Vidar, one of Odin's sons, will stride forward. He wears a special shoe crafted from all the scraps of leather that human shoemakers have ever discarded, built throughout all of time for this exact purpose. Vidar will place this shoe in Fenrir's lower jaw, will grasp the wolf's upper jaw with his hands, and will tear Fenrir's jaws apart, killing the beast that killed his father. Thor will face Jörmungandr, his ancient enemy. This will be their final confrontation. Thor will strike the serpent with Mjolnir, landing a killing blow that crushes the serpent's skull. But as Jörmungandr dies, he will exhale his venom one last time. The poison will envelope Thor. The god of thunder will take 9 steps backward, away from the serpent's corpse, and then will fall dead himself, overcome by the venom. The protector of gods and men will die victorious but poisoned. Tyr will fight the monstrous hound Garma, who guards the entrance to hell. They will kill each other in single combat, the one-handed god and the hellhound falling together. Heimdall and Loki, eternal opposites, watchman and trickster, order and chaos, will finally face each other. They will fight with all their skill and hatred, and they will kill each other, falling side by side, their blood mixing on the battlefield. Freyr will face Surtur, the fire giant from Muspelheim. Without his sword, which he traded away for love, Freyr will fight with a stag's antler, with anything he can find, but it will not be enough. Surtur will cut him down with the flaming sword, and the god of peace and fertility will fall. The fighting will rage across Vigrid. Gods and giants will die in dozens. The Einherjar will fight like the legendary warriors they are, but they will be overwhelmed by sheer numbers. The battlefield will become a slaughterhouse, corpses piled upon corpses, blood soaking into the earth. And then Surtur will raise his flaming sword high. He will strike the earth itself, and fire will spread across the world. Mountains will crumble, the earth will sink into the sea. Flames will consume Asgard, burning the golden halls, reducing Valhalla to ash, destroying everything the gods built. The world tree Yggdrasil will shake and tremble. The world will sink beneath the waves. Everything will be consumed by fire and water. All that the gods created, all that they fought for, all that they died defending, it will end. Darkness will cover everything. The cosmos will return to something like Ginnungagap, the void from which it first emerged. This is Ragnarok. This is the twilight of the gods. This is the end that was prophesied from the beginning, that every god knew was coming, that even Odin's wisdom could not prevent. But the story does not end there. Chapter 9. The New World, Rebirth and Hope. After the fires have burned out, after the floods have receded, after the darkness has lifted, the world will not remain void. According to the Völuspá, something survives, something returns, something is reborn. The earth will rise again from the sea, green and fertile, more beautiful than before. The sun will have a daughter who takes her mother's place in the sky, riding the same path her mother rode, bringing light to the new world. The stars will return to their places. Life will begin again. Some of the gods will survive Ragnarök. Vidar, who killed Fenrir, will live. Vali, another of Odin's sons, will endure. Modi and Magni, Thor's sons, will find their father's hammer Mjolnir lying in the grass where he fell, and they will claim it, carrying on his strength. Honir, who was exchanged as a hostage to the Vanir, will survive somehow and will have access to prophecy and divination in the New Age. Most remarkably, Balder will return. The best of the gods, whose death marked the beginning of the end, will emerge from Hel's realm where he has dwelt since his murder. He will return to find the ruins of Asgard, but also the possibility of rebuilding. His brother Herder, who unwittingly killed him, will return as well, and the two brothers will be reconciled, their tragic past resolved in the new world. These surviving gods will gather in a place called Idavöla, where Asgard once stood. They will sit together and speak of the old times, of the gods who fell, of the battles they fought, of Ragnarök itself. They will find golden game pieces in the grass, the same pieces the gods played with before the world ended, and they will remember what was lost. And humanity? 2 humans will survive Ragnarök by hiding in a place called Hodmimis Holt, meaning Hoard Mimir's Wood, or Treasure Mimir's Wood. Their names are Leif, life, and Liftrasir, stubborn to life, or lover of life. They will endure in this shelter during the flames and floods, sustained by morning dew. When they emerge into the new world, they will repopulate Midgard, becoming the ancestors of a new human race. This rebirth is crucial to understanding Norse mythology's deeper meaning. Ragnarök is not simply an ending, but a transformation. The world that was born in violence, from Ymir's murdered corpse, and sustained through constant conflict between order and chaos, finally succumbs to that chaos. But the destruction is not permanent. The cycle turns. From death comes life. From ending comes beginning. Scholars debate whether this rebirth narrative was originally part of the pagan Norse tradition, or whether it was added later under Christian influence, after Iceland's conversion to Christianity around the year 1000. The argument goes that the concept of world destruction followed by paradise might reflect Christian apocalyptic thinking, particularly the Book of Revelation's vision of the New Jerusalem. Some scholars, including Daniel McCoy in his book The Viking Spirit, argue that the version without rebirth is older and more purely pagan, that the original Norse belief was that Ragnarök would be the final, absolute end, with no hope of renewal. Others argue that cyclical destruction and rebirth are common enough in Indo-European mythologies that it need not be a Christian borrowing. We cannot know with certainty. What we can say is that both versions exist in the sources we have, and both reveal something profound. If Ragnarök ends in absolute destruction, then Norse mythology is a philosophy of tragic courage. Do what's right, fight for order, maintain dignity, even though entropy wins in the end. If Ragnarök ends in rebirth, then Norse mythology is a philosophy of cyclical hope. Everything ends, yes, but endings enable new beginnings, and life continues even after the worst catastrophes. Perhaps both are true. Perhaps the Norse held both possibilities simultaneously, understanding that we cannot know what lies beyond the end, but that we can is that end with courage regardless. The legacy. What the Norse gods still teach us. The gods of Asgard are no longer worshipped. The last official pagan temple in Scandinavia was destroyed nearly 1,000 years ago. The Vikings who sailed and raided and told these stories around longhouse fires are long dead. But Norse mythology has never been more alive in popular consciousness than it is today. You encounter Norse mythology constantly, whether you realize it or not. 4 days of the week are named after Norse gods. Tuesday, Thursday, Wednesday, Woden Odin's Day, Thursday, Thor's Day, and Friday, Frigg's Day, though some scholars argue it refers to Freyja. These names survive from when English-speaking peoples were still pagan, before Christianity converted the Germanic tribes. Norse mythology saturates modern fantasy literature and popular culture. J.R.R. Tolkien, author of The Lord of the Rings, was a professor of Anglo-Saxon and deeply knowledgeable about Norse mythology. His dwarves, his conception of elves, his wizards, particularly Gandalf, who shares many characteristics with Odin, his Middle-earth itself, all draw heavily from Norse sources. The names of most of his dwarves come directly from a list in the Völuspá. The name Middle-earth is literally a translation of Midgard. Modern comic books and films have introduced millions to Norse mythology through Marvel's Thor, though the cinematic versions take considerable liberties with the source material. The films depict Asgard as a technologically advanced alien civilization. The myths depict it as a divine realm. Still, these modern adaptations have sparked interest in the original myths. Video games have embraced Norse mythology enthusiastically. The God of War series explores many of the myths we've discussed. Assassin's Creed Valhalla immerses players in Viking Age culture. Countless other games draw on Norse sources. But beyond entertainment, Norse mythology continues to resonate because it speaks to fundamental human concerns that transcend any particular culture or era. It grapples with questions that every generation must face. How do we live knowing that everything ends? How do we maintain courage when we know we're going to lose? How do we build and create and love when entropy guarantees that everything we make will eventually be destroyed? How do we respond to fate? Do we fight it, accept it, try to change it, or simply face it with dignity? The Norse answered these questions not with reassurance, but with defiance. Their gods knew they were doomed and built Asgard anyway. Their warriors knew they would die and fought bravely anyway. Their poets knew the world would burn and sang songs anyway, hoping those songs might outlast even Ragnarok itself. This philosophy, sometimes called Northern heroism or Northern courage, doesn't promise that virtue will be rewarded or that justice will triumph. It doesn't claim that the good guys always win or that sacrifice will prevent disaster. It offers something perhaps more valuable: the example of beings who faced absolute doom with absolute courage, who died well even though they could not win, who maintained their honor and their purpose even as their world literally burned around them. In our own age, when we face challenges that seem insurmountable, climate change, political polarization, pandemics, the countless ways our world seems to be coming apart, perhaps there's something to learn from gods who knew the world was ending, but who got up every morning anyway, who fought the giants anyway, who built and created and loved anyway. Not because they thought they could win, but because maintaining order and fighting chaos was simply what they did, who they were, why they existed. The Norse gods were not perfect. They were not even particularly moral by modern standards. Odin was manipulative. Thor was violent. Loki was cruel. The gods lied, cheated, broke oaths, murdered, and betrayed. They were deeply, profoundly flawed. But they were also magnificent in their willingness to face their flaws, face their doom, and keep fighting anyway. And perhaps that's the gift Norse mythology offers to every age that encounters it. Not false hope, not reassurance, not promises of eternal reward, but something more valuable, an example of courage in the face of inevitable loss, an example of continuing to build even when you know destruction is coming, an example of maintaining meaning and purpose even in a cosmos that offers no guarantees. The world tree may fall, the gods may die, the world may burn, but the story survives. The songs continue. And in every age, people gather in new halls to tell the old tales about the All-Father who sacrificed everything for wisdom, the Thunder God who defended the innocent, the trickster whose chaos enabled creativity, the world tree that held everything together even as it was being destroyed, and the final battle where gods and giants fought to determine whether the universe would end in chaos or in dignity. Ragnarök came. The gods died. The world burned. But we're still telling their stories, still singing their songs, still drawing strength from their courage. In the end, perhaps that's their greatest victory. Not that they prevented the twilight, but that they faced it in ways worth remembering, in ways that inspire us still, in ways that remind us that how we face our endings matters as much as how we live our beginnings. Conclusion: the eternal return. Let your breathing slow now as we come to the end of this long journey through the Norse cosmos. We began in Ginnungagap, in the void before creation. where fire and ice met and gave birth to the first being. We watched Ymir die and become the world. We saw Yggdrasil root itself at the center of everything. We walked through Asgard's golden halls and stood on Bifrost's rainbow bridge. We met Odin, who sacrificed his eye and his comfort, and ultimately his life in pursuit of wisdom. We met Thor, who fought giants and serpents to protect both gods and humans. We met Loki, whose mischief darkened into malevolence until he became the very force of chaos he had once helped to constrain. We witnessed Baldur's death, that moment when the light began to fade. We saw Fenrir bound with lies and watched Tyr sacrifice his hand. We stood on the battlefield of Vigrid as gods and giants clashed in the final battle, as Odin fell to Fenrir's jaws, as Thor killed the serpent and died from its venom, as Heimdall and Loki killed each other, as Surtr raised his flaming sword and burned the world. And we saw something else, the earth rising from the sea, green and renewed, Baldur returning from hell, new gods gathering on Idavola, Leif and Lifthrasir emerging from their shelter to repopulate Midgard. The possibility of beginning again, of continuing the cycle, of hope emerging even from the ashes of absolute catastrophe. This is Norse mythology. Not a religion you're asked to believe in, not a moral code you're expected to follow, but a way of seeing the world that acknowledges both its beauty and its brutality, both its order and its chaos, both its meaning and its ultimate meaninglessness. And that suggests we can face all of this with courage, dignity, and perhaps even joy. The Vikings who first told these stories are gone. Their longhouses have rotted away. Their ships have sunk or burned. Their weapons have rusted. Their bones have turned to dust. But their stories remain, passed down through the centuries, written in Eddas, carved on runestones, whispered in poems, adapted in novels and films and games, still speaking to something fundamental in the human experience. We too live in a world that seems to be ending. We too face challenges that appear insurmountable. We too must decide how to respond when prophecy seems inevitable, when the forces of chaos seem overwhelming, when the bonds that hold society together appear to be breaking. Do we despair? Do we give up? Do we retreat into denial or cynicism? Or do we follow the example of the Aesir? Do we build anyway? Do we create anyway? Do we love anyway? Do we fight for order and meaning and dignity even when we know that entropy eventually wins? Do we face our Ragnarok with courage, hoping that perhaps, somehow, something will survive the flames, something will rise from the sea, something will continue even after we're gone? The Norse answer was clear. The gods knew they were doomed and prepared for Ragnarok anyway. The warriors knew they would die in battle and trained in Valhalla anyway. The skalds knew the world would burn and composed songs anyway. They did these things not because they thought they could change fate, but because doing them was what gave life meaning, what made existence worthwhile, what separated civilization from chaos. In the end, the greatest gift Norse mythology offers is not an answer, but a question. What will you do with the time you have? How will you face your inevitable end? What will you build, knowing that it cannot last forever? What songs will you sing, knowing that they might be the only thing that survives you? The world tree is falling. It has always been falling. It will continue to fall. But while it stands, while its roots drink from the wells of fate and memory and wisdom, while its trunk connects the 9 worlds, while its branches shelter the eagle and the squirrel and the stags, while the Norns tend to it daily, while all this remains, we have a cosmos. We have order. We have meaning. We have the possibility of heroism, of sacrifice, of courage, of continuing to fight even when we know we're going to lose. Rest now. Dream of golden halls and rainbow bridges, of Thor's hammer crashing and Odin's ravens flying, of Loki's laughter and Baldur's light, of the world tree standing tall despite everything trying to bring it down. Dream of Ragnarök and rebirth, of ending and beginning, of death and life intertwined. Dream of courage in the face of doom, of dignity in the face of chaos, of meaning wrested from a universe that offers no guarantees. The Norse gods are gone, but their lesson remains. Face what comes with open eyes and brave hearts. Build what you can build. Love what you can love. Fight what you must fight. And know that how you face the ending matters as much as anything you did in the beginning. From void to Ragnarök to rebirth. This is the story the Norse told. This is the wisdom they left us. This is their gift across the centuries. Not false hope, not reassurance, not promises, but something more valuable. An example of how to live and how to die when the world itself is ending. The Allfather's throne sits empty now. Valhalla's doors have closed. Bifrost has fallen. But the stories remain. And in the stories, the gods live still, fighting their endless battle, maintaining their dignity, showing us how to face our own twilight with courage and grace. Sleep well. And when you wake, remember what the Norse knew. The ending is inevitable, but what you do before the ending matters anyway. Perhaps more than anything else, that matters most of all. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Norse mythology. From the void of Ginnungagap to the twilight of Ragnarök and the hope of rebirth. May you carry the courage of the Aesir as you face your own challenges. May you build with purpose even in uncertain times. And may you remember that how we face our endings defines us as much as our beginnings. Rest well in the knowledge that the old gods, though no longer worshipped, still teach us how to live with dignity, die with courage, and find meaning in a world that promises nothing but still offers everything.